We actually integrate because we can, because we've got the skill set.
Welcome to another episode of the Unmanned Podcast, powered by USI. Today we sit down with Ray Adams, president of Airde Elevated Thinking, operators of the Cape-Atlantic UAS Test Range. In this episode, we get to better understand how drone development takes place and how the Cape May site assists in the testing of new technologies and drone capabilities. We even touch on some counter-drone stuff. Interesting. Ray and his partner Ron Leach, who we'll speak to in an upcoming episode, provide a unique partnership on air and ground safety in the testing environment. Let's hear from him. Hey Ray, how are you doing today? Nice to see you.
Hey Matt, good to see you also. Doing great.
So for our audience, we talked a little bit about you as we introed and your background, but why don't you give us a little more about yourself before we dig into the details of today's discussion? What's your aviation chops, your background? How did you get into the drone industry as well from your previous life in aviation?
Yeah, it's a long story, but we'll try to give the abridged version here. I started off my career in aviation almost accidentally in the Navy. I went into the Navy when I was 18 years old. I was supposed to be a nuclear engineer, and things didn't pan out right with a couple of factors there. So they offered me air traffic control, and I didn't have any idea what air traffic control was. The closest thing to aviation that I had was my uncle had a Piper Cub back in like the 1950s that he used to fly around. I had, other than being on a commercial airliner, I really had never been in a plane, small plane, helicopter. But, they made a compelling case. The Navy said to me, if you do this, you'll do 5 years. And if you want to stay, we'll give you like an extra 20,000. I said, sign me up.
They always get you with the money.
Money talks, right? So, I started that. So I did that for about 5.5 years. Started off at Naval Air Engineering Center, Lakehurst, which is a very small facility in New Jersey. But interestingly enough, led me to the engineering side 35 years later of aviation. I actually worked with aircraft that were being developed for aircraft carriers and all kinds of stuff. It was really neat being like a 19, 20-year-old kid sitting in a room full of test pilots and being the lead controller. And it was just, it kind of sparked my interest a little more. After that, went to Naval Air Station Bermuda. That was my sea duty. So I never got to see the ship, actually.
It's tough life out there.
Defending the shores of Bermuda from the invading ships. The FAA at the time was looking for air traffic controllers, but there was a hiring freeze on. And the Navy was shutting the base down in Bermuda. And Bermuda's kind of strategically located in the middle of the New York Center oceanic environment. So they wanted to subsume that radar feed into New York Center. I was lucky enough to be, basically tagging along with that. Me and 4 of my colleagues went directly into New York Air Traffic Control Center on Long Island, did 6 years there, and then transferred to Newark Tower because I thought, well, let me go back to New Jersey. Wow, it was a shock. Newark is a fun place, a rough place, and if you're going to cut your teeth on real terminal operations, it's a place to do it. So had a blast. 20 years there. Ran the union for almost a decade, did all kinds of stuff there, and actually got to do some work with the FAA on system deployment into the national airspace. So I got to learn the ins and outs of, systems development, engineering, requirements, deployments. You can't learn that stuff from a book. I mean, when you're immersed in it as a subject matter expert, and it really you get the full flavor. So that's a long way to get to the current day. I retired about 4 years ago out of Newark Control Tower.
These are air quote retire?
Yeah, I forgot to do that. I retired. So Ron Leach and I got together through a colleague. Ron was a state trooper and flew their helicopters, and I was obviously an air traffic controller. I used to talk to him all the time. Got connected through a colleague. And we brainstormed this Urban Low Altitude Transport Association, which is the nonprofit that we run, because we really wanted to have a platform to inject the operational realities into what we saw as a very academic exercise in the integration of UAS into the National Airspace System. It's being run by NASA, and I love my NASA colleagues. I work with them all the time, but they're academic for the most part, and other folks. So we wanted to have that bottom up experience, bring that realistic operational experience into the conversation, which I think we successfully did. And now that was my foray into drones. I still don't consider myself a drone expert, to tell you the truth. I leave that to Ron. I like to say I'm more about airspace integration and understanding how everything kind of pieces together.
That's super interesting. And I've said this before on this podcast that more people right now in the drone industry kind of fell into it, or it just happened to work their way in. It wasn't a thoughtful process and purposeful process. But more and more, we're going to start encountering these younger folks in aviation coming up with a laser focus on drone and drone technology and autonomy and things of this nature, as opposed to, just starting in manned aviation and then falling into in the drone industry. So I think that's going to be interesting. I also say, my cousin, shout out to Gabriel Hernandez, somewhere out there watching, hopefully, he was a nuclear engineer in the Navy, and I think you got a better deal than he did. So it kind of worked out well for you that you moved into air traffic controlling and leveraged that into a successful career outside. So for our audience, really what I wanted to focus on today is speaking about how the test range for drone and drone technology in and around the United States, how it operates, what it's for, why it's there. There's a host of different test ranges that are kind of approved locations, and you operate in Cape May's test range. So for our audience, can you kind of explain what the test ranges do and what their purpose is and how they fit into the UAS ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. I mean, without having the full background from when the test ranges were devised back, I guess, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, they were codified into law a certain number of test ranges that were meant to help the FAA learn ways to integrate, test and integrate drones into the airspace. I like to say that I think that out of the 7, I think there's 7 of them now that technically exist as range administrators are under the law, and then we've got these kind of separate spin-offs. I think they all approach it in different ways. I think some take an economic development approach for the region. Some take more of a forwarding the technology approach. But overall, they were designed as areas where waivers could be issued to do things you couldn't generally do in the National Airspace System with a drone. Now, over the years, and especially just recently now with the Part 108, Part 146 rule, we've seen the FAA start to learn from those things, integrate those things, build rule sets around the information they've derived from these ranges, which I think was probably the intent all along. I don't see them going away. I know that we're learning really. I think we're learning a lot from them. They're evolving over time to capture the newer entrants. Right, it's not so much the small, it's larger entrants that are coming in. We're talking about everything from the sub 55-pound UAS, which is what everybody thinks of when they talk about drones, to the 1,320-pound, 25-foot wingspan aircraft that's going to be used possibly to fly cargo back and forth.
Can we say it's easier to get a waiver or easier to do kind of new and novel activity at these test ranges? They're there to allow us to do more complex, newer stuff, right? I mean, you're talking about heavy lift aircraft with cargo, or light aircraft with long endurance, things like that, with battery technology ever changing. Can you briefly explain about your test range? What's unique about Cape May? I mean, not everyone knows where you're located, but it's pretty interesting location to say the least. And I don't know if you can talk about the geography or airspace, shoreline and water corridors or things like that. describe that for our audience.
The Cape-Atlantic Test Range is what we like to call it. That's the official, unofficial name or unofficial, official name of the test range. Is located centered on the Cape May Wildwood Airport in New Jersey. And if anybody doesn't know where that is, if you look at New Jersey and there's that little peninsula that sticks out on the bottom, we're pretty much right on that peninsula and surrounded by water on three sides. So it's very unique. It's strategically located. One of the real important parts of this is it is really directly between New York City and Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. It's in a place where you think you would not be able to do a lot of research and development, test and evaluation, but it's got such a unique geography, location. It's kind of in this really lull spot of traffic in that really dense northeast corridor. So it's a fascinating place, and it stems back from I think it was called the Mid-Atlantic Aviation Partnership, probably back around 2013, 2014. It was originally kind of tied up with Virginia Tech and Maryland, and then there was some kind of a breakup there. And the test range itself Virginia Tech had the test range, and Cape May established its own public interest COA, a public use COA that they were doing some work under. And what Ron and I did recently was we spoke with the Aquasi team at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who actually administers or is the authority of our COA. And they were so gracious, and they saw the value of, basically reestablishing that airspace as a place to do some testing on the East Coast. And so now we have an airspace. It's pretty extensive. It's probably about a 60 mile by 60 mile area, up to 7,000 feet in most parts of it. Pretty much touches Atlantic City all the way down to Lewes, Delaware, which is just across the bay, and extends all the way out to almost the Delaware Memorial Bridge. And we also go all the way out to the warning areas, which are the military airspace just outside just offshore, basically, right? So we've got this great connectivity between different airspaces down there.
Now that you said Atlantic City and going out there, everybody's thinking, I heard about you on the news. You the people that are flying the crazy drones in the middle of the night. They weren't, by the way, or maybe.
No, we got blamed for it, though. It was kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So you briefly touched on the platforms, but I wanted to unpack that some more. What platforms and profiles do you support there? It sounds like you can go all the way up to like Group 4 and 5 and BBLOS and things of this nature?
Well, so I'd say we haven't gone to the Group 4, Group 5 yet. We're mostly Group 3. We don't typically work with smalls. We have in the past, but generally, I like to say we're like the hidden gem, right? So we don't do any marketing really. We don't. Everything is kind of word of mouth with us. And when companies come down, they establish a relationship with us. It's a long-term relationship. So we tend to have companies that will do a year or two of consistent testing, where they come down, they test, they go back, they iterate, they come back, gather more data. One of my sayings as an air traffic controller, and I say I don't play with toys. No offense to anybody, but we really like to say everybody's doing the smalls, right? That's kind of been there, done that. They're starting to deploy those, but the largest still require waivers under Part 91 to do most of it, and that's where we're going to focus. And we're actually looking at some larger aircraft coming down, talking about fully remote or autonomous cargo aircraft. We're in conversations with a few companies right now.
Yeah, and the new NPRM for 108 just recently released, and I know we talked about this on this podcast a few weeks ago, and how there's the allowance for these very large aircraft now built in there. So it's interesting that you're talking about your test site, focusing on that, and I really am talking about the test site to let our listeners know, how are drones developed? How are they made in the U.S. and tested? And this is how, by partnering here. So one thing you also need to consider as an industry, and I think you probably do, and I'd like to hear about that, is what about safety and risk, risk assessments or risk management? How does Cape May and the test site there manage risk and consider the safety of the public and those folks around?
Every UAS operation has to be managed from the ground risk side and the air risk side, as you probably know. So the ground risk mitigation is mostly done by, we operate over low density populations. Really, there's no density population. We operate over trees, we operate over water, we have pathways out to the bay and the ocean, we utilize. From an air risk perspective, Cape May is in a really interesting spot. It does have traffic. The airport actually does have some traffic. So right around the airport, we apply generally air traffic principles. So that's where we kind of shine. My partner Ron Leach was a helicopter pilot, flew AW139s and flew Bell 407s, so he knows it from the sky. And I have 3 certified tower operator tickets, so I know how to operate an airport pretty well. So we do a lot of we actually don't operate in sterile airspace. Most places where you operate in a test range, there's nothing around. Right? You're in the middle of North Dakota, you're in the middle of Oregon, you're in the middle of upstate New York. We actually integrate because we've got the skill set. And we do a very detailed safety review, all the way from airworthiness up to, the operational risk mitigations. And if we end up in an operation where we think that the risk is getting too high because of the traffic, we'll actually just wait. We'll just wait it out, right? So we apply our 35 plus years of experience each in doing this to mitigating risks.
You talked about the location having a lower population density, and you have those overwater areas. The flight test ranges inherently are probably a little more risky just because you're doing tests. You're testing new equipment, new software, you're doing maybe new maneuvers. So managing that is important. And it sounds like you have a good balance of an air SME and a ground SME together that can help manage that operation. And I think it's appropriate. If you think it's too high of a risk, no reason to push it. Let's pause. Let's wait. Let's wait until some of the air traffic is less congested, and get back out there and conduct these tests in a safer environment. But I don't think, some folks think, you should, never operate unless you're a low risk. And that's not really feasible in the environment of a test site. And I think it's just important to understand there's other ways to mitigate and control that. So it sounds like you're doing a good job there. We talked about the 108 and the allowance for the larger aircraft and things that are changing in support of BBLOS. What's your thoughts on the rulemaking and the NPRM? Do you have any, thoughts, good, positive, negative? Where are you at with the 108?
Well, I can't say I've read all 687 pages of it, right? So
no one has, I hope.
Somebody had to. It wasn't me. But I did listen to the NASA podcast or webcast the other day, which I found interesting, and I've gotten some briefings from other folks, and honestly, inside of FAA, I still do some work for FAA through my company, Airde Elevated Thinking. So we've had insight into 108 before it came out, a little bit. Mm-hmm. Just, we never had the details, but we always knew a little bit was going on. There's too many differences in the operations between small UAS or even large UAS now, and what manned traffic can do to truly integrate at scale. Onesie, two, yeah. There's just not enough there yet. There's still lots of holes in, they're learning strategic deconfliction. They're learning how DAA is going to work. And there's a lot of, I have some concerns about how the use of ADS-B as a deconflictor is being passed around or codified in some way. I worked air traffic for 31 and a half years. I've seen all kinds of surveillance. I've used every kind of radar there is, every kind of cooperative technology that exists out there. And I can tell you that we use correlation of multiple sources of data in air traffic for a reason, including the pilots telling us what altitude they're at to confirm that their altitude reporting on their mode C or ADS-B is actually correct. We don't have any of that right now built into the 108 rule. I am definitely concerned about that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting perspective and take, and I think you're right. You have a vast knowledge base. I sat in a precision approach radar room once, and I was like blown away that they were able to do the things they're able to do with this 1940s tube technology. So I'm sure you've been exposed to that and the next gen stuff as well. So that's a very important and unique take. I agree with you. I don't think ADSB is a piece of the puzzle, but not the only piece of the puzzle. And it seems to me that there's this thought that this is good. This is all we need in concert with maybe UTM or some traffic management tool. And until there's a standard that's put out that describes how those two tools may collaborate together, I don't have a good, I guess whatever, warm and fuzzy that we're in a really good space yet.
Yeah, you need an independent source of truth, which you don't have coming from onboard systems. So you have to have some correlation, and I think that's what's lacking right now. And that comes straight out of our air traffic management concept, the way we operate the safest air traffic control system in the world. So why would we degrade that just because in the interest of getting something out there? I think it needs to be worked on.
I at least appreciate that they gave some, going to some other parts of the rule, they gave some kind of framework over education and training. Obviously, USI does training as our primary, operations. And I think it's nice that they've kind of now framed it, although it's still vague enough that there's some more unpacking and understanding needed to be done, but at least they put some high level, this is what a trained person should look like. We'll see what that looks like when the rule actually comes out. Quickly back to Cape May, and I think our users are always interested in this because I hear about it all the time. You may not be able to discuss all of it, but have you had to go retrieve a drone from the water? Have you had to, do you have a story you could share with the listeners with regard to, this drone did 16 loop-de-loops and became a submarine or something like that?
Well, interestingly enough, we hosted the Assure A60 counter UAS project back in end of April, early May this year, which was huge because I think we had 5 universities come down. So the other test sites brought their people, brought their drones. This is an activity that's kind of traveling around the country. I think they may be in North Dakota or just finished up North Dakota right now. We operated off of the DRBA, Delaware River Bay Authority ferry terminal, which is on the west side of Cape May on the bay. They wanted to do a counter UAS detection activity around some critical infrastructure and a maritime environment. So we fit the bill perfectly. And we were running tons of sorties every day for 2 weeks straight. And I can say, I think 1 or 2 of them might have ended up in the water. I don't remember the stats. I'm just going to just say it does happen, right? But that's why you mitigate your risk. But the most interesting part of that was the fact that even though we published a NOTAM, even though this was a known activity, we actually had a few helicopters come zipping right through our test zone, including the Coast Guard. So it was an interesting activity. You had to be on your toes. Your range safety officers had to be on their toes, because you're trying to track ADSB, right? Because everybody's got that. We didn't have any kind of real radar out there, let's say, to find those targets. Actually, I think we might have had a radar. We had a radar out there, but I don't think we were tracking those things. We had, Coast Guard helicopter came like 200 feet, ripping right down the beach, right through the activity. So everybody there had to learn that this is not a sterile range, and you have to understand that you will be integrated. You will have manned traffic that you can put as many protection in place and notification in place as you want. You're going to have to miss somebody at some point. And that was the big shocker to a lot of people.
With regard to those, you said there's not a lot of folks around, so you might not have to worry about noise and privacy. But is there any other concerns with like wildlife or any other local stakeholders that you have to manage and work with the community to make sure that you have a healthy relationship?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So it's for as much as that the airport area is sort of low density, the coastline of New Jersey is exceptionally populated. And exceptionally wealthy. So it's basically it's almost like the Hamptons South. That's what we have down in Cape May area. So so stakeholder engagement is key. We work out of the airport. We have an exceptional relationship with the airport operator. We work with the county very closely on economic development, and they support our activities. And then, of course, you do have to manage, any in the summertime, especially any impacts to the shore communities, right? So it's just like anywhere. I mean, any operation, any flight operation, you're going to have those factors that you're going to deal with. And I think that we do a good job of. It's funny, the folks that come to us sometimes don't understand all those things, and they learn about them as they're doing their testing, which I think helps them down the road, right? So if you were an operator coming in to do whatever you're going to, as a matter of fact, just say real quick, I mean, USI has been fantastic. What you guys are doing with the BBLOS training with the Centauros is excellent, and just for the viewers' information, we're in conversations with USI to bring some of that activity to Cape May for some flight training. So we're looking forward to it. You guys have been great partners. We've been working closely with your leadership on those things, and what you're doing for training has been excellent. I have one of your books up on my shelf, actually.
Well, we appreciate that.
So I mean, all that goes into the training aspect. We've had to convince the airport authority over time that we have appropriate procedures, skill.
Mm-hmm.
Our pilots are professional. We don't work with amateurs. We have aircraft that we vet. Now it's still testing, right? Things fail, and we've actually had things fail before. But the fact is, we're not putting things up in the sky that we expect to not make it back. Generally, right? It is testing, but and all that credibility that comes along with that. And even the stakeholders at the airport, like the other aircraft owners that they have hangars there and they fly their airplanes. We hear things through the airport operator sometimes. Oh, these guys are out there that, they're flying this big airplane and I don't know what it is. And we're like, look, come over, come see it. We'll show you what it is. We'll explain what we're doing to you, because we all have to coexist here, right? They're all aircraft.
That's always an effective thing. We did before my previous role, really active, proactive community engagement, especially with the military, because you kind of already alluded to, they might not have ADSB out on a military aircraft. So we really want them to be familiar with our flyable area and where we're operating. And so just like you're saying, come and look, come and see, have an open house and let me show some of the technologies and some of our testing campaigns and test cards, so you can understand better what we're doing. And I think that's an awesome outreach. I think that Cape May, it's paying dividends, I'm sure, for Cape May and the relationship you have with the community. We're coming up kind of on our time, and I just want to make sure to give an opportunity. How does a new entrant or a current OEM reach out and say, hey, this sounds like a unique environment. I'll get some, saltwater interaction, maybe some coastal fog. There's a bunch of, I'm sure, environmental and weather nuances that are there at Cape May. How do they get in touch with you? How do they connect in order to maybe come out there and do some testing?
Yeah, like I said, put this way, we're terrible businessmen. We don't market. We need to step that up, right? But we really rely on word of mouth. Fact is, my company, Airde Elevated Thinking, we take inquiries through the website, because Airde actually runs the test range. I don't know if you can put that up on the screen later on, or we can pass that out, but it's airde-elevated.com. Otherwise, you can catch me on LinkedIn, Raymond Adams. Just look up Raymond Adams, Air Traffic Controller. I'll come up. It's pretty easy to find me. And hit me on LinkedIn. That's easy enough. Or Ron Leach, right? Until we get some better way to market that. Also, if you contact University of Alaska Fairbanks, who is our oversight, effectively, they have the authorization, and say, we would like to do some East Coast testing with your range, your folks, they'd be happy to give us a call or refer you over to us.
One other avenue, if you're a partner with USI and you just don't remember all the connections that was just spoken about, you can reach out to USI and we'll happily connect you with the Cape May folks and the range there and make sure that you are accommodated. It's been awesome speaking with you and thanks for your time. And I want to come out and visit you and see what's going on. I haven't been able to come out there yet, but I think it'd be awesome. So maybe next time you have a test campaign that's of a larger scale, myself and a couple other colleagues from USI will be able to come and visit you.
Well, I hope you can, Matt. And this was actually a great time to come. We'll be in the next month or two while it's in the shoulder season before it gets cold. So try to make it out.
I love it. Well, thanks for your time. I hope you appreciated this, audience. Very forthright with regard to testing, test range, and how to participate if you're interested in it. And we look forward to talking to your partner very soon. And thanks again for your time. Thanks, Ray. I really appreciate your time. And I, for one, can't wait to come and see flight testing activities very soon. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Thanks for watching. You can also look forward to hearing from Ron in the follow-up episode very soon. Bye for now.